Hey guys, in this video we're going to be talking about how to detail an entire interior with no chemicals whatsoever. Literally, I'm just using my steamer, and I'm going to try to avoid even using a detailing brush. So I'm starting over here on the driver's side door, and as I talk through this, let me also say that this is not my favorite way to detail, but a lot of detailers like to do this because there's kind of like a marketing angle and sometimes kind of like an environmental angle to not using chemicals, and it becomes kind of popular in the detailing world. So I'm going to kind of give you my pros and cons as we go throughout this whole interior and do this, and really just in my process explain what I like, what I don't like, and where I feel like the limitations are. So as I'm starting with this door panel, all I'm going to do is try to take my steamer closer up to these areas that are kind of like tighter in to get to, so these kind of cup holder areas, pocket areas, and then very generally pull back my steamer and use my microfiber towel to mop up that hot steam as I go across any of the easier to reach areas of the panel. So it's going to look like this. I'm going to go up and down and back and forth. And all I'm really trying to do here is get enough of the heat on the door panel to pull up any surface dirt that would normally be a lot easier to take care of with chemicals, right? So I'm going to come across the top just like this. Now, again, I always want to be thinking as I'm doing any interior, what are the areas of the car that are going to get naturally the most dirty? This right here is where people rest their arm like this when they're driving, and so this is where a lot of dirt builds up. So I'm going to take more generally my steamer just like this, heat it up, and then come in with my towel and kind of scrub this area. Now, part of the thing that I don't like as much about using a steamer like this is it actually does require a little bit more work, in my opinion, in terms of the agitation, because I don't have a chemical that's stirring things up for me. So if I'm gonna get some surface dirt off, I'm gonna have to kind of scrub with my microfiber towel. And I actually, even if I was not doing just a steam cleaning detail, I would probably do something very similar to these areas, because I like the fact that more than just compressed air is going in here, because I could use compressed air to blow out these areas, but with the steam going down in there, there is an element of cleaning this area that wouldn't happen otherwise. Now, something to caution everybody about: when you're using a steamer closer on particularly a black interior with plastic, you are definitely at risk of leaving like a streak or a burn mark or something like that across this area. And so I'm always very, very careful to hold the steamer at a cautious length. Now, I will say, when you are dealing with black plastic, I actually am more careful with the smooth type of black plastic that's not really porous, like this is kind of porous. This tends to be stained a little bit easier than other areas. Now, some of you might say, well, how do you steam these button areas like this where there's like some electrical components? I just want to show you this and then I'll explain it. So you guys saw how little steam I actually introduced, and therefore little water I introduced to this area, but all I did was actually blow, 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 then take my microfiber towel, immediately mop it up, blow on the back end there, mop it up. So I'm never introducing a steamer just sitting there like this with an area that's kind of got this electrical component to it. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and finish this back half here, just like this, around the speaker, making sure, again, I get those areas where the plastics meet. Then this particular door panel is totally done. Now, it's probably worth pointing out that if this door panel was dirtier and there was a bunch of adhered, nasty grossness on this type of method would not work, which is actually part of the limitations of this method that I don't love. If you're dealing with a car that's not quite as clean as this one, using just a steamer would be kind of a nightmare. Now, as we come into the dashboard, you've got different speedometer areas depending on what kind of car you're working on. This type of car, I've got a lot of like speedometer plastic, little tiny areas where I don't want to use a steamer, because oftentimes when you use a steamer on these areas, that steam actually can fog up or condense behind the speedometer plastic. And unless you can get that out, which sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, you got kind of a problem on your hands. I'm going to show you what I do with these types of areas. But first, I'm going to go ahead and just steam clean the air vents just like this. Now, often people get kind of wary of steam cleaning air vents like that because they feel like they're going to put standing water inside of an area, that the water is just going to sit and it's not going to dry. It's important to understand, I think, a lot of people overestimate the type of damage a steamer will do. Most of the damage you'll find from a steamer is not introducing standing water. It's introducing really hot steam to an area that can't really handle it, and you start to damage like either the white lettering or you start to damage the black plastic where it starts to fade. The steam is never going to introduce so much water where it just starts to stand still and starts to like mildew or get like too humid in a particular area. Now, I also steamed the area around the air vent here, and I'm gonna go ahead and take my steamer to the dashboard as well and the air vents up here. Now the dashboard is one of these areas where I really don't need to spend a lot of time, because just like in a maintenance detail where you're kind of determining what requires time and what doesn't require time because you're seeing the car on a regular basis, the dashboard in any vehicle is never going to be the dirty thing, right? So even when I'm just using a steamer, I can barely spray just a little bit of water, just honestly to dust this area, and then I can move on. Now this is kind of a complicated area in that you've got this speedometer plastic back here, you've got a bunch of dust over here, and you've got, of course, the intricacies of the steering wheel itself. So what I want to do is take my microfiber towel, I'm going to cover the plastic speedometer here. I'm going to kind of tuck my microfiber towel underneath here again, and these are kind of game time decisions. When you're on a job, I can decide, okay, great, I can fit my microfiber towel like this. Now, even if I hold my steamer directly at this, it's not actually having steam hit that plastic. Now I can actually start to dust this area because there's a ton of dust, and so it's just easier to be able to blast the whole thing and come clean up afterwards and not have to worry about this. So it looks something like this. You guys can see I'm just blasting every area around the steering wheel here, just like this, to get in all the cracks and crevices. Then I can take my microfiber towel now, and I can just start to kind of maneuver it to like floss in between these tiny areas. I'm going to take my microfiber towel, I'm going to cover the speedometer area, because now I'm going to go after the face of the steering wheel. So I'm going to make sure that I'm not holding my steamer close to these buttons, because what often happens is this white lettering around these buttons can get pulled off if you hold the steamer too close. So I'm going to start with the face of the wheel, then we'll go here and talk through this. Again, you can see me just waving this back and forth over the buttons, so nothing crazy is happening. Now again, because I've got buttons, I'm just going to go ahead and wipe off the water instead of letting it stand still, all right? And again, that heat from the water is going to be what acts as kind of my cleaning agent. And then, of course, the agitation from my microfiber towel. I'm going to get in these cracks and crevices. Moving on, and I want to make sure that I get, again, where all this plastic meets down here. Now some of this, remember, is some of that smooth plastic, which is notoriously easy to damage with a steamer, so caution, caution, caution around this steering wheel. When I actually hit the steering wheel itself, what I'm going to do is fold my microfiber towel into fourths. I'm going to hold it behind the steering wheel. I'm going to take my microfiber towel, and I'm going to take my steamer in front of my microfiber towel, and I'm just going to go around the face of the wheel just like this. I'm going to be agitating with my towel like this every step of the way. Just like this. Okay, and now I'm gonna go ahead and move on. This whole area is dusted, it's cleaned as best it can be, and you might be wondering about the speedometer. The speedometer kind of got cleaned by default here just by moving my microfiber towel around it so much. So I'm just gonna make sure that we've dusted behind it a little bit, but other than that, that's really as much as we need to do here. Now, as we start moving down this console area, again, we've got like speedometer plastic right here, and this is gonna be something we wanna stay away from, but at the same time, we've got all these buttons that need to be dusted, and same thing is true down here. So what I'm gonna do with this area is something that I don't necessarily suggest you guys do, but because I've seen this car a bunch, I know that I'm gonna be able to do it. So I'm gonna take my steamer, I'm gonna hold it back here, and I'm just gonna wet this area very gently, okay? Just like this. All right. That's all I'm gonna do. We've got some condensation around the center here, but nothing's inside. So this is gonna allow me to dust this area, and then I'm just gonna start maneuvering my microfiber towel in these areas that are super tight. Now I'm gonna cover this plastic a little bit here so that I've got only the buttons exposed, because I wanna get a little bit more heat here, and I'm gonna push this down just like this. I want to show you guys a little bit, hopefully you can see, this is actually not it, but underneath here there's a little bit of condensation. The reason this happened is because I pushed the steamer down, and so I pushed it into this seam right here where the water can actually get down in there and of course rise and kind of stick to the back of the plastic. So never point the steamer towards any sort of seam around a plastic piece like this. Now what I'm going to do is just take an air compressor, blast it in here. It's going to let some airflow back here because this is a relatively open seam, and it's going to fix it entirely. But I just want to show you guys what that looks like, so when you're on location and doing this, this this is something that you can recognize when you see it. Now, as I go down this area, things are gonna get a little bit easier just because there's not a lot of things that I have to watch out for. And so what I'm gonna do here is, and this is an area where I think the steamer has an advantage, I can kind of clean all this area in one fell swoop, and I don't have to worry about spraying a bunch of chemical and then mopping it up and all that sort of stuff. So what you're about to see me do is literally just take the steamer to all the cracks and crevices, kind of generally to heat everything up, and then more specifically to get the dust out of all these tiny areas, from the cup holders to all these areas that require a little bit more attention, kind of like underneath the emergency brake here. So this is what this looks like. Now again, this is kind of where I like the steamer, and that I can just kind of blast in these cup holders. The reason why I'm spending a little bit more time with the transmission here is because what do we touch? We touch this area, which is actually why I love using the steamer in this area. Here we go down the center. I'm gonna come blow out these lower plastic areas and the sides of the seat here. And I would normally address this area in a very, very similar way, probably not using any chemical whatsoever, just like I'm doing now, because it's just easier to blow out these areas as they are, just like this. Now, one of the things that's important to stop and say is that you're gonna get a microfiber towel that gets really, really wet a lot quicker probably than another approach to detailing would make it. So having many different dry microfiber towels will help you a lot in a process like this. But the next thing I'm gonna do, and normally I would save this process for a little later, but I'm gonna actually steam clean the leather seats. Because the interior is so small, and because I'm addressing it only with the steamer, I might as well go ahead and address the seats before I move to this side, and then we do the carpets. And so I wanna explain how I'm going to do this. The very first thing I'm gonna do is use the steamer to blow out the seams of the seat here. The reason for that is because this is kind of the detailed part, so I just like getting that out of the way. Then I'm gonna go ahead and take everything to kind of the general area of the leather seat. I'm gonna pull back the steamer, and I'm gonna do basically a very similar approach to what I did on the steering wheel. Use the steamer, let the heat up these pores in the leather. Then I'm gonna be agitating with my microfiber towel pretty aggressively, putting a lot of elbow grease here because that's where I want most of the cleaning power to come from. Okay, now I've done the seams, we're gonna go to the general seat as a whole here. Now we'll go ahead and do the same thing to the back here as well. Now, as I move to the passenger side door, the cup holder or the pocket areas here are a little bit dirtier. And so one of the things we can do with a steamer when you need to blow things out, a lot of people make this mistake. They'll kind of take the steamer head and they'll stick it down in here and they'll kind of blow things everywhere, which is totally fine, but you're introducing a pretty good amount of water when you're putting this so directly inside of the pocket. And so if there's a lot of crumbs or like different things that need to kind of come out, I would rather hold this at a distance like this so that more air essentially gets in there and blows everything out rather than mixing it with water. So it kind of looks like this. Now I've got this area really blown out and I can go ahead and take my microfiber towel to it just to get any of those last minute crumbs so that now when I introduce the steamer down in here and introduce more water, I'm not mixing a bunch of sludge down here. And one of the things that I want to emphasize because it's so helpful, a lot of detailers will really spend way too much time sitting here trying to clean up all the excess water. The reality is I can get 50% of the water if I want to, 70% of the water, and it's going to dry totally streak free because I'm just using distilled water. There's nothing in the water. So there's not gonna be any water spots or like cleaning marks left over, especially because I'm not using a chemical. So there's really not gonna be any cleaning marks. So I would just say one of the things that would really speed you up is if you did not worry about the excess water that's left over. Now in a car this size, because I kind of took care of all of the more intricate areas over here that take a little bit more thought, this side should be really, really quick. I'm literally just gonna take my steamer to all of the dashboard here, get a little bit behind here to dust some of these air vents, and I'm just kind of moving downward. Now next steps are the carpets, because we've kind of done all the hard vinyls, leathers, plastics on the interior. And while this is actually a maintenance client of mine, I'm gonna remove the floorboards just kind of for the video's sake, and I wanna show you guys what I'm doing. Essentially, the only dirty areas of this car in terms of the carpets are gonna be around the borders of the floor mat, because like I said, it's a maintenance client, and so I see it on a regular basis. So this area, this general area, doesn't have a lot of dirt because it's always covered by the floor mat. And of course, the cracks and crevices like in between the console and the seats here, we've got some dirt there as well. One of the reasons why I like to use a steamer to stir that up when I'm dealing with the impossible carpeting here, rather than just an air compressor, is oftentimes with the impossible carpeting, a steamer with the pressure and the hot steam stirs up this dirt a lot more effectively than it would if I was only using an air compressor. And so what you're gonna see me do is literally vacuum up the excess here. Then I'm going to take my steamer, blast it out, blow it out here to stir it up, and vacuum again. Then I'm gonna go do that with the driver's side floorboard as well. Now when I switch to the steamer here, all I'm gonna be doing is blasting out the dirt from all these border areas and the tight areas. So because I'm not using any carpet shampoo, this is essentially the method for cleaning the carpets. So I'm just gonna take my microfiber towel, doesn't have anything on it, and I'm gonna be drying behind my steamer and blasting out these tiny crumbs from the impossible carpeting. A lot of times the steam will, in some sense, loosen up the fibers as well. So it makes it a little bit easier, like I said, rather than just using compressed air, to get a lot of this stuff out from that tight weave of the carpet that's so difficult to deal with. I'm gonna come in here with my microfiber, help stir up a little bit more, and then finish with my vacuum. Now these rubber floor mats are another area where I don't love cleaning with just a steamer because it just takes a lot longer. But again, for the sake of doing all of this with no chemicals, this is going to look exactly like it would look if I was cleaning the door panel or anything else we've talked about. I can take my steamer and I can blow off a lot of the excess stuff just like this really quickly. And then all I want to do is take my steamer only to the necessary areas because these floorboards are not that dirty. So where I see really stuck on stuff, I'm gonna steam it away just like this. Take my towel and mop up the steam and the dirt just like this. And the reason why I'm really only trying to do this where I have to is because I'm just gonna wipe off the rest of this mat with my towel when I'm finished. That way I save time. I don't have to take a steamer to the entire thing. Then I can just take it to the general area just like this. I can blow it with an air compressor to dry it really quickly to see if I missed any spots. To get only what I need cleaned on these mats without having to clean everything. Now, the last thing I want to touch on here are the windows, because I think this is kind of the non-intuitive part of detailing. But if these were tinted windows, I would not be doing it this way. But windows can actually be cleaned with steam because it's so hot, it tends to heat up the oils even though they don't mix with water. So I'm gonna take my waffle weave towel and I'm gonna use my steamer to go over the area, particularly the area where I see a lot of smudges. And I'm gonna be using this as an agitator just like I was on the leather seats. So check this out. Then I can switch to a dry side, but this is one of those areas that I love about using a steamer on the interior, even a steamer only. Windows are a really great place to do that. So guys, just to conclude, this is something that I do not do in my detailing world. I think that it's kind of a waste of time, especially if you've got a car that's any more dirty than the interior we were doing here. But there are a few areas where doing something like this or having this type of framework for approaching the detailing process helps a lot. Number one, like I said, I love it with windows like this. If I don't have access to a 50-50 dilution of alcohol and water, this is a great way to do it if the windows are not tinted. Number two, using a steamer like this really quickly when we were going over some of those general areas like the dashboard is a really good way to dust an area that doesn't need to be cleaned in like 20 seconds or 10 seconds or less. I can take the steamer, very generally go across the entire dashboard, give it a little bit of water there just to pull the dust off, and that's all I need to do. I don't need to introduce a cleaner. And so honestly, doing things like this can kind of help you understand the places where you do need to introduce a cleaner and the places where you don't, because in about 50% of the areas of this particular interior, introducing a cleaner cleaner would only slow me down because I have to clean up the cleaning marks, I have to make sure I don't have any residue, and the area is just not dirty enough to justify it anyways. So I'll hook up the steamer that I used in this video, the VX5000, which is what I use professionally, as well as some more budget steamers for people who are not looking to spend that kind of money on a steamer. But this is one of my most essential tools in the detailing world that I experience on a day-to-day basis. So without a steamer, there's a lot of things I couldn't do. I think a steamer is one of those most fundamental tools that every detailer needs. But I know there's a lot of tools and products in the detailing world to choose from, and it gets really confusing. So in addition to hooking up some different options as far as people on different budgets for steamers, I'll also hook up my top 12 tools and products list for anyone who wants just a straight up top 12 tools and products, all for under $500, so you guys know what to get and what to avoid in the detailing world. It took me a long time to put that list together, so I'll hook it up for free in the YouTube description box below. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and as always from Luke here at Wilson Auto Detailing, keep working hard, and I will see you in the next video.